Picture a world reeling from the aftermath of the Great War, an economic crisis looming and a nation burdened with the blame. This was Germany in the early 20th century. The Treaty of Versailles had ended the Great War, but with it came a heavy price for Germany. The country was held accountable for the devastation, saddled with crippling reparations that sent its economy into a tailspin. The Weimar Republic, born out of the ashes of the imperial regime, struggled to maintain order in the face of hyperinflation, political extremism, and widespread discontent. The German people, once proud and prosperous, found themselves grappling with poverty, unemployment, and a sense of national shame. The atmosphere was ripe for radical change, for a promise of better days and a return to glory. Amidst these turbulent times, a sinister force was gathering strength, unbeknownst to the world. Enter Adolf Hitler, a charismatic orator with a vision that would change the world. The year was 1920, and post-World War I Germany was struggling. The nation was economically crippled, and the people were disillusioned. Amidst this turmoil, a man emerged from the shadows, promising salvation and national glory: Adolf Hitler. Hitler began his ascent in the humble ranks of the German Workers' Party. He quickly recognized the party's potential as a political tool, and, with his captivating speeches, rapidly gained influence. By 1921, Hitler had reshaped the party into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or what the world would come to know as the Nazi Party. Over the next decade, Hitler and the Nazi Party capitalized on Germany's discontent. They manipulated the people's grievances and fears, promising prosperity and the reclaiming of lost territories. The Nazi propaganda machine worked tirelessly, painting Hitler as Germany's savior. By January of 1933, Hitler's relentless political maneuvering paid off. Despite never winning a majority in the Reichstag, Germany's parliament, he was appointed chancellor, an event marking a turning point in German history. Hitler now held the reins of power, but he wanted more. He wanted absolute control. In one of his first acts as chancellor, Hitler and his Nazi cohorts manipulated the Reichstag into passing the Enabling Act. This law effectively dissolved the last vestiges of democratic rule, granting Hitler the power to enact laws without the Reichstag's approval. Hitler had now become, in effect, a dictator. With absolute power in his grasp, Hitler began to implement his vision, leading to years of tyranny and terror. Yet this was just the beginning of a dark chapter in human history, a period that would forever remind us of the devastating consequences of unchecked power and hatred. Hitler's Germany, a regime built on propaganda, fear, and a vision of racial purity. This period was characterized by a chillingly methodical approach to governance, with the Nazi Party exercising control over every aspect of life in Germany. The party introduced policies that reshaped the social, economic, and political landscapes. They implemented autarky, a policy of economic self-sufficiency, which aimed to make Germany independent of foreign imports. The Nazis also placed a strong emphasis on militarization, churning out weapons and machinery at an unprecedented rate. This aggressive expansion of the military was a clear violation of the Treaty of Versailles, but Hitler's charismatic leadership and promises of a restored German glory kept the nation in line. However, the most horrifying aspect of Nazi rule was undoubtedly their racial policies. Hitler preached a vision of Aryan supremacy and racial purity, which led to the systematic persecution of groups deemed racially undesirable. Jews, Romani people with disabilities, and many others were targeted, resulting in what we now know as the Holocaust. The Holocaust was a systematic, state-sponsored genocide that led to the murder of 6 million Jews. Jews were herded into ghettos, transported to concentration camps, and subjected to horrific brutality. These concentration camps, such as Auschwitz and Dachau, have since become grim symbols of the Nazi regime's inhumanity. Meanwhile, the Nazis maintained an oppressive rule over their citizens, suppressing dissent through a combination of propaganda, intimidation, and brutal violence. The Gestapo, Nazi Germany's secret police, played a key role in this, arresting and torturing anyone suspected of opposition to the regime. As Nazi Germany spread its influence, the world watched in horror. The scale of the atrocities committed was unprecedented, and the international community was forced to confront the reality of what was happening. It became clear that action had to be taken, and the stage was set for a global conflict the likes of which the world had never seen before. As Nazi Germany spread its influence, the world watched in horror, and soon it was time to act. The world united against a common enemy, setting the stage for the largest and deadliest conflict in human history. World War II erupted in 1939, with Nazi Germany leading the charge. Hitler's well-oiled war machine seemed unstoppable, blitzing through Europe with a terrifying speed and efficiency. The Nazis initially experienced great success. They swallowed up territories, from Poland to France, imposing their iron-fisted rule and spreading fear. But this was not to last. The turning point of the war came in 1942, with two significant events. Firstly, the Battle of Stalingrad, the bloodiest battle in human history, where the German army met the unyielding resistance of the Soviet Union. It was a brutal, bitter winter standoff that would result in a devastating defeat for the Nazis, marking the beginning of the end for Hitler's campaign. Secondly, the entry of the United States into the war. The attack on Pearl Harbor had awoken a sleeping giant, and the scales of war began to tip. The combined strength of the Allies gradually pushed back against the Nazi onslaught. By 1945, the tide had turned decisively. The Allies advanced from the west, the Soviets from the east, squeezing Nazi Germany in a vice. The once formidable Third Reich was crumbling under the weight of its own ambition. In a bunker in Berlin, Hitler made his last desperate act, ending his own life. With their leader gone, the Nazis capitulated. On May 8, 1945, a formal surrender was signed, marking the end of the war in Europe. The Nazi regime, which had caused so much pain and suffering, was finally brought to its knees. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief. Hitler's dream of a 1,000-year Reich crumbled in just 12 years, marking the end of Nazi Germany. In the ashes of war, the world was left to reckon with the horrors of the Nazi regime. A period of reckoning ensued, with the Nuremberg trials taking center stage. These trials, held between 1945 and 1949, aimed to bring those responsible for the atrocities of World War II to justice. High-ranking Nazi officials were prosecuted for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and other offenses against the international community. The trials were a powerful symbol of accountability, sending a clear message that such barbarity would not go unpunished. But justice was only part of the equation. The world also faced the colossal task of denazification, the process of eliminating Nazi influence from Germany's political, economic, and social institutions. This involved purging Nazi sympathizers from positions of influence, dismantling Nazi laws, and educating the German people about the evils of Hitler's regime. It was a process fraught with challenges, but ultimately essential in preventing the resurgence of such destructive ideologies. In the wake of these horrific events, the international community recognized the need for a global organization dedicated to maintaining peace and security. Hence, the United Nations was born. Established in 1945, this international body was tasked with preventing future conflicts and promoting human rights, a beacon of hope in a world scarred by the horrors of war. As we reflect on this period in history, it's crucial to remember the important lessons it taught us. The rise and fall of Nazi Germany demonstrated the devastating consequences of unchecked power and hatred. It showed us the depths to which humanity can sink when driven by fear and prejudice, but it also revealed our capacity for resilience, for justice, and for change. Nazi Germany, a dark chapter in human history, serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked power and hatred. It's a chapter we must never forget, and a lesson we must carry forward as we strive to build a world that values peace, justice, and human dignity above all. From the ashes of a broken nation rose a brutal regime, only to crumble under the weight of its own atrocities. We've journeyed through the rise of Hitler and the Nazi Party, borne witness to a reign of terror that shook the world to its core. We've walked the battle-scarred roads of World War II and observed the downfall of a regime that once seemed invincible. We've examined the ashes left in the wake of this devastating period in history and reflected on its profound aftermath. We've delved into the rise of a dictator, the unprecedented power of a party, and the world war that marked the end of an era. We've seen a nation rise from the ruins only to fall again under the weight of its own horrific actions. As we remember the fall of Nazi Germany, it is our collective responsibility to ensure that such atrocities never repeat in the history of mankind.